The 49ers are back. San Francisco was once an NFL powerhouse, but not so much this century. The Niners made the Super Bowl in 2012 and 2019, but they lost in both, the latter coming to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. The 49ers should have won. They led 20-10 in the fourth quarter before 3 straight Kansas City touchdowns. They were right there on the cusp of their 6th franchise Super Bowl, but they fell short. That was the one that got away, and since, the 49ers have had to wait 4 years for their shot at redemption. But in the meantime, San Francisco stayed busy. They continued to build up their roster and seem to have finally found their quarterback of the future. And now, the Niners have returned to the promised land for a shot at redemption, not only to win their first Super Bowl since 1994, but to get their revenge on the Kansas City Chiefs. But first, thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. Listen up, football fans. This is the last weekend of the year to get your football bets in. We've teamed up with DraftKings, and right now is the perfect time to take your shot at the crown. DraftKings is giving all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly when they place their first $5 wager on anything. There's no time like the present. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up using our promo code JDPROD, and that's right, new customers who bet just $5 will get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Wondering what you can use that $200 in bonus bets on? Combine multiple bets together from Super Bowl 58 for a shot at an even bigger payout. If you're already signed up for DraftKings like me, you can make a bet on Super Bowl 58 and get a bonus bet back. Get a bonus bet in the amount of your initial wager. Max reward varies. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry, you can still get in on all of the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have a shot at winning cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code JDPROD and bet just $5 on any wager and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code JDPROD only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Thank you again to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. Let's get right back to it. The 49ers are one of the most successful franchises in NFL history, and a lot of that has to do with a 14-year stretch from 1981 to 1994 where they essentially ran the league. Over that span, San Francisco won 5 Super Bowls under Bill Walsh and then George Seifert. A lot of good players played for the Niners during that time, with Joe Montana being the big name. He won 4 or 5 Super Bowls, was the MVP of 3 of them, and also won 2 season MVPs. Dwight Clark was his top wide receiver for those first 2 Super Bowls, but then the Niners drafted some guy named Jerry Rice, who went on to win 3 Super Bowls and a Super Bowl MVP in San Francisco. That Super Bowl came with Steve Young starting, a different 2-time MVP who also won a Super Bowl MVP. Talk about a loaded franchise. The 49ers dynasty won with 2 different head coaches, 2 different top wide receivers, and 2 different MVP quarterbacks. It was truly a special dynasty, but all good things come to an end. The Niners didn't make another Super Bowl until 2012, where they lost to the Ravens during that Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick-led season with Jim Harbaugh at head coach. Harbaugh actually made 3 straight NFC championships, but was forced out after the 2014 season, and thus came 4 different head coaches in 4 years for the Niners. Jim Tomsula was a disaster, and Chip Kelly might have been even worse. But then, after the 2016 season, the 49ers hired general manager John Lynch and another new head coach, young offensive mind Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan had just won Assistant Coach of the Year as the Falcons made the Super Bowl, and Matt Ryan won MVP with him at offensive coordinator. Shanahan had already served as the OC for a few teams, including the Browns, the then Redskins under his father Mike Shanahan, and the Texans. Kyle Shanahan didn't have a great start to his head coaching career. The 49ers started off with an 0-9 record in 2017. Not so surprisingly, Brian Hoyer and CJ Beathard weren't getting the job done. The 49ers needed to improve at quarterback, so they sent a second-round pick to the Patriots for Jimmy Garoppolo. He had started just 2 games in his career in New England, both of them coming when Tom Brady was suspended for Deflategate. Now, Jimmy G didn't immediately start once he got to the Bay Area. Garoppolo sat for a few games until he was finally named the starter. The 49ers were 1-10 at the time, but with Garoppolo at the helm, they finished 6-10. He won 5 straight to close out the season, and there was some hope in San Francisco. However, the Niners did end up having a pretty rough 2018 season. Garoppolo tore his ACL in week 3, and Jerick McKinnon tore his ACL in training camp. That led to a disappointing 4-12 season, but you could really chalk it all up to injuries. The 49ers were so bad that they had the 2nd overall pick at the 2019 NFL Draft and landed Nick Bosa, who did go on to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. So much of the 49ers' success in the Shanahan era has to go back to the draft. Now, his first draft wasn't perfect. Solomon Thomas and Reuben Foster were busts looking back, but the Niners found a gem in that 2017 draft. In the 5th round, they selected Iowa tight end George Kittle. 1 year later, they hit in the 3rd round on Fred Warner. That's literally how you build a good football team. Hit on your later picks. In 2019, it was easier with Bosa, who was arguably the best player in the draft, and it did help that we had already seen his brother Joey Bosa translate well in the pros. But San Francisco still kept hitting. They took Deebo Samuel in the 2nd round and got Dre Greenlaw in the 5th. The roster construction for the 49ers has been so good, and it's a huge reason why they've had so much success under the John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan regime. And it all started back in 2019. San Francisco started the 2019 season 8-0. They didn't lose a game until November when they fell to the Seahawks 27-24 in overtime. The Niners actually only lost 3 games all season, all by 1 possession by the way. They ended up as the top seed in the NFC, and after knocking off the Vikings, they made the NFC Championship where they eventually beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. The 49ers were finally back in the Super Bowl, and Kyle Shanahan was looking for some redemption of his own. The last time that he was in the big game, his offense just stalled out and the Falcons blew a 28-3 lead. And this time around, it was the same story. They ended up blowing a 20-10 lead in the 4th quarter to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. That was a tough loss to swallow, and it didn't help that in 2020, the 49ers struggled and went 6-10. Simply put, they just couldn't stay healthy. Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Richard Sherman, and Nick Bosa all missed time due to injuries. It also didn't help that Santa Clara County didn't let them play home games during COVID, so the Niners had to play their last 3 home games of the season at the Cardinals Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. It was a throwaway year, but the Niners made some important moves. They ended up trading for Trent Williams from Washington, and again, had a big draft. They took Javon Kinlaw at 14 and Brandon Ayuk at 25. Then later in the 7th round, they selected Jawan Jennings. However, it was the next draft that the 49ers hoped would alter their franchise for the foreseeable future. They found a steal in Talanoa Hufanga in the 5th round, and then they took Elijah Mitchell in the 6th. More notably though, they traded up to 3 to select Trey Lance, who the Niners hoped would be the quarterback of the future. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. Lance was viewed as a project quarterback, so the Niners wanted him to sit and learn, and he had a chance to behind Jimmy Garoppolo in 2021. The Niners just kept winning, and they ended up making the playoffs again, where they beat the Cowboys and Packers to return to the NFC Championship game. They ended up having to face off against the division rival Rams, who they had already beaten twice in the regular season. But the NFL is so competitive, and it's so hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, and the Niners couldn't. They fell short as Matthew Stafford and the Rams went on to win the Super Bowl. It was another season that was so close, but not enough. Jimmy Garoppolo had a good run, but now it was time for them to turn to Trey Lance. The 49ers had a pretty rough start to the 2022 season. After finally getting his shot to be the starter, Trey Lance suffered a season-ending ankle injury in week 2. Luckily for the Niners though, they ended up bringing back Jimmy Garoppolo on a 1-year deal in the offseason, so they were able to turn to their veteran who had been good before. Still though, San Francisco got off to an underwhelming 3-4 start. Something needed to change, and in that 7th game of the season, there was a new face on the field for the Niners, Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers gave the Panthers a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th for him, and it paid off. After that Week 7 loss to the Chiefs, San Francisco somehow won 10 straight to end the season. Garoppolo won 5 straight, but he suffered a season-ending foot injury in Week 13. So the 49ers had to look to their 3rd-string quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant rookie Brock Purdy. A lot of people wondered if the 49ers were going to go out and sign someone to start, but they ended up up sticking with Purdy. He went 5-0 to close out the season for the Niners at 13-4. In the playoffs, San Francisco beat the Seahawks and Cowboys to once again make the NFC Championship. Unfortunately though, they'd lose for the second straight season, but not in normal fashion. Purdy tore his UCL in the game, and then fourth stringer Josh Johnson came in and he ended up getting hurt. That meant that Purdy had to come back in, but he really couldn't throw the ball, so they stood zero chance. The season ended with not just disappointment, but hopelessness. Still though, the 49ers had a good roster and maybe a new quarterback of the future, but only time would tell. The Niners started the 2023 season 5-0. They crushed the Steelers 30-7 in Week 1, and Brock Purdy played well, passing for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. It came after months of rehabbing from that right elbow surgery and questions of whether or not he should even be the starter. Those questions were soon silenced after 3rd overall pick Trey Lance was traded to the Cowboys for a 4th rounder. However, that still left offseason signing Sam Darnold, who the Jets drafted 3rd overall back in 2018. There was reports of a quarterback competition, but Purdy ended up winning the job. And just like in his rookie year, the 49ers kept winning. Their closest game during that 5-game win streak came in Week 2 against the rival Rams. It was tied at the half, but the Niners pulled away to win 30-23. Then the 49ers won back-to-back against the Giants and Cardinals, two not-so-great teams in 2023. They beat the Giants 30-12 and beat the Cardinals 35-16 behind 4 Christian McCaffrey touchdowns. Week 5 was the first time that the 49ers faced what a lot of people thought was going to be a tough test, the Cowboys. San Francisco had beaten Dallas in back-to-back close games in the playoffs, but this time around, it wasn't very close. The 49ers dominated 42-10. Purdy threw 4 touchdowns, and 3 of those were caught by George Kittle. Meanwhile, Dak Prescott threw 3 interceptions. If the 49ers weren't considered legit before, they sure as hell were now. And then they lost 3 straight. The Niners had won 15 straight regular season games, and Brock Purdy had won the first 10 starts of his career before Week 6, but that all came to an end. With 6 seconds remaining, Jake Moody missed a 41-yard field goal, and the 49ers lost 19-17 to the Browns. To make matters even worse, both Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams got hurt in the game too. They didn't play in Week 7 against the Vikings, and in the 4th quarter, Purdy took a hit to the head from Jordan Hicks on a quarterback sneak. Purdy was not evaluated for a concussion after the play and wound up throwing 2 interceptions afterwards as the Niners lost 22-17. It was uncharacteristic for sure, but then on the way home, Purdy complained of concussion symptoms and landed in concussion protocol. That would have been late Monday night or early Tuesday morning, yet somehow, someway, he was cleared on Saturday and was able to play the Bengals on Sunday. That was a very quick stint in protocol, considering the median return from a concussion is 9 days. Purdy had a single touchdown and 3 interceptions in a 31-17 loss. Just like that, the Niners went from 5-0 to 5-3. It really felt like the Brock Purdy magic had finally run out. Luckily though, San Francisco hit their bye and got some time to evaluate and rest. And then they made it pretty damn clear that they weren't going anywhere, and neither was Brock Purdy. The 49ers followed up their 3-game losing streak with a 6-game win streak. The Niners absolutely crushed the Jaguars coming out of their bye 34-3. Trevor Lawrence turned it over 3 times, and Purdy passed for 3 touchdowns without a single turnover. The 49ers started a new streak, but a different streak ended. Christian McCaffrey did not score a touchdown in the game. He had scored in 17 straight games and was tied for the NFL record with Lenny Moore. The Niners really tried to let him score too, going to him on 5 straight plays while other starters were out of the game. The following week, the 49ers beat the Buccaneers 27-14, and there was a new storyline. Brock Purdy. He completed 21 of 25 passes for 333 yards and 3 touchdowns with a perfect passer rating. There were certainly questions about Purdy after that 3-game skid, and he answered all of them. Then on Thanksgiving, San Francisco crushed the Seahawks 31-13. In Week 13, the 49ers faced another big test, the Eagles. It was more than just a game between two very good teams. It meant more, especially to the Niners. It was an NFC Championship rematch, a game that the 49ers didn't stand a chance in after Purdy tore his UCL and Josh Johnson suffered a concussion. It was personal for San Francisco, and that was clear. Dre Greenlaw was ejected after an interaction with Eagles security staffer Dom DeSandro, who was also ejected. The 49ers scored a touchdown on 6 straight possessions. Purdy threw 4 and Deebo Samuel scored 3. It was a 42-19 domination, proving that if Brock Purdy hadn't gotten injured, maybe last year's NFC Championship game would have turned out differently. The next week, the 49ers beat the Seahawks 28-16, and then in Week 15, Purdy returned home to Arizona as the 49ers won 45-29 over the Cardinals for their 6th straight win. And again, just like that, San Francisco went from 5-3 to 11-3. But a tough game was on the horizon. The 49ers were the best team in the NFC and had to face off against the best team in the AFC, the Ravens, on Christmas Day. Brock Purdy was in talks for MVP before this game. He wasn't afterwards. Purdy threw 4 interceptions, and Lamar Jackson made a statement as the Ravens won 33-19. It was pretty disappointing, but there was really no reason to panic. The 49ers then beat Washington 27-10 in Week 17, and in Week 18, the 49ers rested some starters, including Brock Purdy. Sam Darnold got the start, and San Francisco lost 21-20 to the Rams with Carson Wentz starting for them. That ultimately left the 49ers with a 12-5 record and the top seed in the NFC, giving them the bye. The Niners got to sit back and watch the wild card round before they had to face off against Jordan Love and the Packers, fresh off a dominant win over the Cowboys. And it really wasn't the best game for San Francisco. Purdy just looked off, and the 49ers defense just kept giving up big plays. Yet somehow, they still found a way to win. They had a late 69-yard drive that ended with a Christian McCaffrey touchdown with a minute 7 remaining to go up 24-21. And that was enough to eventually win the game. It wasn't always pretty, but the Niners found a way to advance to the NFC Championship versus the Lions, and again, they had to come back. But this time around, it wasn't as easy. At the end of the half, San Francisco was down 24-7. They were on the brink of their season being over, but the Niners weren't going to go out without a fight. They scored 17 points in an 8-minute span in the third quarter to tie the game, and then pulled away in the fourth quarter to win 34-24 and return to the Super Bowl to have a rare chance at redemption. The 49ers had to wait 10 months to get their revenge on the Eagles for that NFC Championship loss, but they've had to wait 4 years for another chance at a Super Bowl ring. And it just so happens that it comes against the team that stopped them 4 years ago. San Francisco has earned their chance at redemption, and now it's their time to make the most of it.